iPhone, they all are like good. They all have good cameras now, all of them. So it used to be like a real. I just hate texting people with Androids because they mess up the group chat. But that's outside of that, in terms of like cameras, which is the number one thing people used to argue about with that whole Android battle. It's
You
not
know, the green bubbles is really elitism. You know, you
It
guys
is. It
shouldn't treat
is.
people like this. All about a green bubble, bro. Like it's not kind. It's
It is.
counterproductive to the
It
group.
really is. But to be perfectly honest with you, it started before Android and iPhone. It started with BlackBerry Messenger back in the day. It was the exact same thing. Like, so it just rolled over once we left the Blackberries alone. And then we got the Apple situation. It just carried over.
Can you ask her if she got the link real quick before you start?
Uh
It's coming from my email.
Mad Mazan. She's she's watching it live.
I miss my BlackBerry. Make America great again. Bring back BlackBerries.
Listen,
I was about to say we've been crying for that keyboard to come back for decades. Don't act like we don't miss that BlackBerry, girl.
if a BlackBerry jumped off today, I would get back on it.
That's the only place that slogan applies. I'm not bad at it. Okay, so Darril, do you want to introduce yourself? You probably do a better job than I will since we're, a few minutes late here, so you could just jump right in.
Wait, okay. Sure. My name is Darril. I'm a freelance photographer based here in Atlanta. Specialize in portraits, lifestyle photography, and event photography. I work for the Atlanta Hawks as their guest engagement photographer, and I've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years. So that's in the photography world. That's who I am. And I like wine. I like a lot of wine. So, and that's
Also, what he's not saying is he's a member of the Atlanta chapter.
yeah.
So we always try to tap into community leadership, and he's very supportive. And this is going to be a quick crash course on phone photography. So thank you all for coming. If you have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. I will do my best to moderate and keep up. And if you want to look as well, because maybe you read at a different cadence, that's great too. This is being recorded, so if you don't want your face on the screen, now is the time. If you're wanted for anything, warrants, any reason that you would be hiding, you should duck away at this point. So without further ado, I will let you take the floor.
All right. Well, I want to keep this extremely, 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 extremely informal, but at the same time, continue the conversation that we were just having about phones and cameras and all of the different things that we all participate in. They always talk about how the best camera to have is the one that's on you. And 99% of the time, we almost always have our phone with us. So that's oftentimes the best camera that you have to take your pictures. So it's good to be able to be familiar with that. But at the end of the day, I like to point out something. The phone on the camera is just a camera. And so we're going to treat this just like we would if we were talking about a DSLR, a mirrorless camera, a medium format camera. At the end of the day, the big things that matters is, your shutter speed, your ISO, and basically knowing how to take a picture. And I don't know if I can see any responses or if people could take themselves off mute and say what type of things people like to take pictures of with any kind of regularity. Whether is it just selfies, or is it taking pictures of others, putting together like little scenes or whatever the case may be, or nature photography. What interests people in terms of photography, so we can focus more so on those things.
Mine's heavily food and then people after food.
Okay, so food photography and people after that.
Food and wine photography and selfies.
Selfie. I'm probably not the best person to talk about selfies, but I got you on. I can help you with the food and the wine.
We got some that says products, travel, selfies, food, and wine events. I think that's a little bit different than actual food. Well, food dash wine events. Food is a hard one.
Yeah, it
Food
is.
architecture, cocktails, and wine. I would love to learn about photos at events.
Okay. Well, that's about 3 or 4 people who mentioned events, and it's an area that I kind of specialize in. So we'll speak to that a little bit. And it's the big thing with that, if we're just talking about the phone, only the phone, as opposed to adding other things, is making sure with any camera is going to be lighting. Any type taking a picture of anything is always about the lighting. So whether it's taking a picture of people, whether it's taking pictures of product, whether it's taking pictures of drinks and wine, whatever the case may be, the big thing is finding the best light, putting the product, putting the person, putting whatever in the best light, then capturing the image. Um, that being said, oftentimes when we're at events, um, if you don't have a flash on you, what you're constantly battling is the house lights. What you're looking at is, a lot of shadows, a lot of things like that. So finding the best place to put people in is a big thing. But I do want to talk about some areas that we could focus on in just putting together a regular picture. And I don't know if people utilize these, so correct me. We're going to start at the beginning. So if you're advanced and this seems remedial at this point, then I'll catch up at some point. The big thing I do want to point out is tell everybody on your phone, whether it's an iPhone, whether it's an Android, whether you got an app on your phone, whatever, is be sure that you have a grid overlay in the camera app. If you that helps in putting together the composition for a picture. And that definitely makes it a lot easier to put together a picture that is, well received by others. And if you don't know what or how to do that, I know on an iPhone, what you can do is just go into your settings, go to general, go down to you don't have to go to general. You can just go down to photography into, where is this? I looked at this earlier today. Right. Settings. Camera. And when you go into camera, go down to grid and turn that on. That is going to be one of the easiest ways to put together a photo that is going to be pleasing just not to yourself, but to others. It's a cheat code for a lot of event photographers. One of the easiest ways to make something appear interesting when viewing it is to just put the point of interest on any one of those lines. And when people look at it, that's where their attention is almost immediately drawn to. So if you see the overlay in the camera, if you want to focus on the person's eyes, you want to focus on the person, put their eyes on one of those lines. If you want to focus on the drink in their hand, put that, in on one of the lines on the grid. And that is one of the easiest ways to, draw interest immediately when putting together a photo. So, um, Alicia,
What's the golden ratio?
the golden ratio is it's another grid. It's a little bit, you see on the rule of thirds. One is even, each of the squares are equal size. With the golden ratio, the middle two lines are a little bit closer, and they make they break the picture down into three parts. They put and so you have the most interesting part in the smaller middle two areas, and then you have pretty much your background or your foreground in the bottom two. That creates what they call a harmony of sorts, and that's a little bit more advanced than the rule of thirds when you're putting together a grid on there, but that also will make it a lot easier for you to
So
utilize.
what is,
I'm sorry?
so is one of the grids better than the other, especially for beginners?
No. Either if it's all subject, because some people don't use the grids at all. Some people live or die by the grids. You put it on if you can find, and some people don't utilize the grid until they get to post editing, and then they'll take the picture and then put the grid on top of it, and then match up their scene with the grid to when they want to print out a photo or something along those lines, just to make it more interesting. So whichever is more comfortable for you, those are just some guidelines for people to be able to utilize when putting together a picture of interest.
Tia has her hand up.
Yes, Tia. She's on mute.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, my earphones are trash. I think so. I had the grid. I saw this somewhere else before about how the grid was great. But I just want to clarify. You're saying put, I guess, like what's of interest on the horizontal and vertical lines of the grid. And I'm asking that because, and maybe this is some other setting I put on, when I, point at something, I get like a horizontal line in the middle of the screen, like running directly through the middle of the grid. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding, what you're saying as far as the grid and the focus on what it is that you're trying to take the picture on.
Yeah. Without seeing what that horizontal line is, and it may just be another way to break your image up, or another grid of sort. And if that's the case, then typically anytime you have a grid that goes on your camera screen, it's there to draw interest to the particular thing. So to whatever the point of interest is. So if you put the thing that you're focusing on, or that you're taking the picture of, on any one of those lines, then that's typically going to where the eye is going to be drawn to.
Okay. And I think somebody said, like, it looks like it's leveling.
Oh, no. Now that's typically a horizon type of thing. That's just to make sure oftentimes, and if it levels, and sometimes it goes from green to white, and just that's basically trying to help you make sure that the horizon is even and that your lines are straight, so that when you print out a picture or when you publish it, it's it's even.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. So that being said, once you have your composition, and you raised your camera, or in this case your phone up, and you have it all set up, that of what you want to take the picture of, the best thing to do is to, again, double check and be intentional, making sure that the lighting is the way that you want it to. One of the easiest ways to do that, and this is very generic, I'm giving you some of the cheat codes that you'll see a photographer do if he doesn't have a lot of things and a lot of equipment. He'll put his hand up in front of himself like this, and walk in a circle. Wherever the light is on his hand, it'll be light. When it's dark, it'll be dark. That way he knows where to put the model, where to put the glass, where to put whatever you're looking for in that particular area, because that's going to help him get the best light on that. So basically, if you have your hand like this, you walk around, there's going to be areas where yes, just like Miss Denise is doing right now, you see how sometimes there's definitely areas where it's a shadow. That's probably not the best place to put your model, because that person is going to that's going to be a shadow on your model at that particular time. If you see an area where your hand is well lit, put your model there. That's going to be an easy way to make sure that you're getting light on the person or subject that you're looking for. That's indoor, outdoor. You can do that in any of the areas. The other thing, because we're going to stay on light just for a second, is making sure that you put yourself in the best possible situation. If you're looking for soft light, if you're looking for to take a picture that doesn't have a bunch of shadows in it, then you probably don't want to go outside and take pictures at high noon. Because the sun is directly above your head, it's going to cast a lot of harsh shadows. If that is the particular time that you're outside, you try to find a shaded area that's going to even the light. You take your picture there. Sometimes you want shadows. If you're looking for a moody type of a situation, then the best thing is just to know what your intention is when you're taking the picture. So you want to make sure that you're covering it that way. I know at the top of the call, you talked about people. There were a number of people who said they do a lot of product photography with their phones. And a lot of that is typically, you're not looking for shadows. So that's typically going to require a third, external source of light to make sure that there's not a bunch of shadows on there. So whether it's a key light that you have off camera, if you have a little ring light that you put on your camera that you see, you get off the TikTok shop for like $7 or whatever the case may be, that typically is required to provide that external lighting that you're looking for. Before we move on from lighting, any other questions on that particular thing? All right.
Somebody says nope.
Nope. I saw that. Yes. Nope. All right. Good job. All right. We talked about what happened? Oh, there we go.
Was that a Kappa Alpha Psi shout out? That's what was happening just now?
That did just happen. That did.
Okay. My wife said SG Row. I love y'all.
Yeah. Listen, shout out to you. Shout out to yeah. So we got Zetas in here, we got Noobs in here, we got everybody. It's a big party in here. All right. So another thing I wanted to talk about, since we talked about light, we talked about generic light. The other thing that most photographers, the only thing that, in my opinion, differentiates a photographer from somebody who just takes a bunch of snapshots is the fact that they have intention. If I know what I'm coming to take pictures of, if I know I'm coming to the Hue Society event, we're going to be, trying out wine. We're going to be fellowshipping. I want to be able to tell the story of the event at the end of the event when I deliver these pictures. Then I know I need to make sure that I have the people that are there. I need to make sure that I have the wine that is being drank. I need to make sure that I show people drinking the wine. I need to show the venue, so that when we look back on this time next year and we're thinking about, do we want to do this event again? Did we take care of the sponsor to make sure that they got their branding in the photography? Did we make sure that the drinks are covered? Did we make sure everything is all set up? And so that's a big thing. So you want to make sure that you have what you're looking for, because oftentimes if you're doing that, That could also help you determine what lights that you need to have. That can make sure that you have the appropriate device. If you're going to be using your phone, if you're going to be using an external camera, all of those things. It just gives you the ability to plan and to have what you're looking for. So that being said, make sure even when you're using your phones for your photography that you know what you're looking for. Sometimes we do a lot of photography nowadays specifically for Instagram. And that we know that it's a 4:5 crop on the picture. We know that oftentimes sometimes it's video, and we want to make sure that we're not shooting in a manner that's not going to fit inside of those guidelines. So to know on the front end what you're going to be using your photography for is going to also be a cheat code to help you make sure that you capture it the appropriate way. Any questions before I get into more technical things about a particular phone? Now, I use an iPhone. So I think these translate over to Android when we start talking about portrait mode and spatial photography and all of those things like that. I think they're the same on the Android. So correct me where I'm wrong. All right, so we got everybody all set up with their grids on. Just open your camera app. You should see your grid on the front of that. Everybody see that? Yes, no. I feel like I'm talking to an abyss. Yeah.
Can I just say, I think this would go a lot easier and cohesive if people turned their cameras on. So he can see reactions. He's not going to be able to read and instruct you guys at the same time. And so this is kind of interactive. It would be really helpful if the cameras were on. Thank you.
Yeah. And I understand because we all go to work every day. We sometimes don't like turning those cameras on, but it's just like I don't know what people need help with, what people don't need help with, if they're, I'm in my vehicle just listening. Got it. Yeah. Don't crash. We don't want that.
I was following along on my Samsung, and it ain't apples to apples. I was like, let me just put this phone down, just do the app. Honestly, and if we're being honest with ourselves, we know this camera is good as it is, so I don't need no tricks for this one. So I was like,
Right.
let me just switch up so I could follow it step by step.
Yeah.
this low iPhone, so we can improve my camera experience out here in these streets.
Okay, so I'm gonna, since we're talking candidly, in terms of we know in terms of putting together a picture, you have both. You have the iPhone, you have the Android, and you're putting together a picture. What's the different camera experience? Because at the end of the day, if you point a camera at what you're looking for, you have your grid up, you have your lighting together, you have your intention on what you want. What separates the two in any kind of way? That's the big thing, because any camera that you have on any phone nowadays, if you were to take that camera back to 1990, both of those cameras are amazing. If you took the cameras back to the year 2000, that's an amazing camera. So when people say like, yo, my camera, one camera is this, one camera is that, any camera that's out in 2025, excuse me, is going to be an amazing camera. So I think really at the end of the day, it's what we make when we put together a photo. If we have our attention, if we know what we're looking to capture, if we have the appropriate light, we set it up where we have our subject on one of the focal areas that we're looking to take the picture of. I think we should be good. I know, again, and I only speak from iPhone perspective. And a lot of people speak on Androids. They say those cameras are amazing, but I don't use them, so I don't know what the new amazing features are. So, all right, let's get into the features on an iPhone. Of course, we know video, but we're not talking video. We're talking photo. So we got your basic zoom. You got your extra wide lens, because now most of your iPhones have 2 or 3 lenses. If you set it up, you have a 0.5, that's an extra wide lens. So if you were using a regular camera, that would be like a 16 millimeter. If you go to your 1x1, that's going to be basically about a 35 millimeter lens. And then if you go to the 2x zoom, that's about an 85 millimeter lens. So it's going to be tighter. That's probably more for portraits. That's going to be more specifically for what you're looking for. And of course, you can zoom in, but that's going to be more pixelated at that particular time. If you want to get into some different things, the next section over, the portrait area, that's what you're going to use specifically for, when you're taking pictures of people. If you want that blurry background or bokeh that people like to talk about when they're taking pictures, makes it look like you're using shallow depth of field and getting that separation in the picture. But on a camera phone, a lot of that's like AI generated. So whatever you take the picture of, it separates that and then blurs out the background. They have different lighting scenarios on that. Those are more artistic. You have if you scroll to your right on any of those, you can get different lighting situations. You have from a high key setup to your natural light. Does anybody use a portrait? Yes, no, yes. Monique, you said you do. Does it give you the look that you're going for specifically?
Sometimes, I mean, it can look a little, I don't know, sometimes it kind of looks a little too artificial. Sometimes, I don't know, that's the best word I can say
Yeah,
to kind
it's
of,
AI generated, so it very much so, like in Zoom, when
Mhm.
you say that you want to just blur out everything in your background, it's fine if you don't move. Like because if you move, then the background might not move at the same time, and sometimes it can take amazing images and give you that separation that you're looking for. But it definitely works in a clutch.
Yeah, I will say I like it better with like I with two, so I do two different businesses. I like it better with children and colors in the background. I like it less on just standalone product.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. All right. Yeah. So all of that being said, now the spatial situation on an iPhone, unless you have the fancy iPhone headset, and I think Android has this as well. Spatial photography is basically where you take both of your lenses and it's recording the image, both the depth of the image and the actual picture, so that you can get a 3D image of it and look at it on like one of their devices that offer that capability. But if if you're just using this for regular photos, or you're going to be posting this on social media, then there's really no need for that at this particular time until those areas begin to become compatible with spatial photography. So that's that. I think this will be one of the better. I want to, and if this is okay with you guys, the leadership on the call, I would like to like open because I feel like I'd be a better use if I answer questions that people may have, because as opposed to walking people through how to use a camera on their phone that I'm sure they are way more familiar with than I am. If that's okay with you. So I would like to open the floor for any questions that anybody may have so that I can help.
Food photography. Can we talk about food photography? That's hard. Like, what's the right angles? Like, what's the best setting for to get like to make the food look good?
The best, to be perfectly honest with you, the best thing with food photography is two things. Lighting is number one. And two things, as the photographer, you need to make sure that you are responsible for keeping everything that you have inside of your picture is only there if you want it there. So, you know, if it's making sure that the table is spotless or the background or the plate or whatever the case may be, and you a lot of times you want that overhead shot, so you kind of like you have to have you're not shooting at an angle because to be generically food just isn't it's not awesome. It takes a lot of like staging for food to look good in a photo. And a lot of times it's not a quick type of a situation when you see people. That's why a lot of times if you're out to eat and you're with somebody and they're trying to take pictures of the food, they could be there 10, 15 minutes and the food could be cold by that point. But you want to make sure that you have the appropriate lighting. And when I say appropriate lighting, that's probably a large light source that's close to your food so that it doesn't have a lot of shadows. You want to make sure that there's not a lot of overlay. Everything is kind of exactly the way you want it. And oftentimes the food photography that you see that looks the most aesthetic on online has been doctored. It's not edible. But it looks good. So, but generally 100% of the time lighting is a big thing. So I don't know if you have a like one of the little pocket portable lights, or you can use a light off an iPhone or whatever the case may be. And you can have that, off to the side, typically at a 45-degree angle. You have the camera that you're taking a picture with or the phone that you're taking a picture with directly overhead. And that's going to give you the light source and that's going to give you the camera that you're looking for. That oftentimes will get you that food look that you want. Or it could definitely get you started in that particular regard.
We have a hand up and then we have a question in the chat.
Okay, hand up.
Hi, this is Faiza. I've had my iPhone for about 2 years, and before that, I was a big Android user. So I'm thinking that some of the tricks of the trade I'm just not familiar with. I noticed that when I use the flash on my phone, my pictures look very grainy. Is there anything that can make it less grainy, or is there anything I need to do for that not to happen? But I definitely notice it happens when I'm using the flash at night.
One thing that you might want to do, there's a setting inside of your phone because your phone doesn't know whether or not you want to take a picture for efficiency or if you're trying to take a picture for details. And if you have the efficiency set on, then that basically gives you a very low resolution picture. And then oftentimes that'll be like when you use the flash, that's basically because you're taking a picture in a very dark area, and that's going to add grain. When you use a higher resolution your on your phone, then that's going to reduce that grain a little bit. Well, it should reduce it a good amount, but yeah, that's one way that you could definitely do that. And the way to fix that inside of your iPhone would just be by going to the camera area and let's see. Prioritize faster shooting, macro control. I saw this earlier. Yes, if you go to camera and then you go down to formats and you choose most compatible, and then when you go down to photo capture, you change that from a 12 megapixel to a 24 megapixel. That should give you that should help with reducing the grain in your images.
Okay, and this is in the camera app, not the camera settings or settings under camera.
Yeah, this is under no, this is under if you go to settings and then you go down to camera in the settings area.
Okay.
Data, and then once you get there, go to your I think it's format. Yeah, format. And then that'll give you the area where you should be able to change that. And that should help take care of some of the grain in your images.
Understood. Thank you.
We have a question from TJ Team and is it Android?
Team Android.
Nobody can
Shout out
be
to y'all.
TJ. TJ, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, this is regarding group pics. Is there a certain setting, like angle you should take the picture, or how do you arrange people to get the best photo?
For me, it's oftentimes when you're taking a group pic, you kind of want it to be as symmetrical as possible. So if you have, you don't want, 6 people on one side and then, just 2 people on the other side, and then try to take the picture dead in the center of that list, it doesn't look right. So a lot of times, specifically if you have that grid on your phone that we talked about, you try to get the basic eye level on that top line and center yourself as the photographer when taking that picture. Then that should help in making sure that the symmetry of the photo is there. And then if you can put each person that's in the photo in an area where you can see, we call it a window, you can see their face. Even if they're standing behind somebody, have them stand kind of off their shoulder. That way, each face in the picture is there. Then that's one of the ways that I would try to address those group photos.
Thank you.
No problem.
Also, Mr. George, I would like to volunteer on behalf of anybody who may have a Samsung Ultra device or the Note, that the pen that comes with it has a button on there for any group selfies. And it's hard to get that side button on the phone right to get the angles right with the selfie action. And you could just pull that pen out and press that button accordingly,
That's
for
gotta
those
be
group
convenient.
selfie photos. For once again, Samsung Ultra and Note users.
Game changer, Talika. Thank you. Had it for like 1,500 years and never do that.
Talika is,
Yeah.
you're on fire tonight, girl.
All
Any
right.
other questions?
I actually do. I have 2 questions actually. To go back to the previous question about you show her how to go to format most
Yeah.
compatible, and then
Mhm.
the next option after that. So sounds like that may be for like I have a 12. I have the iPhone 12. So the last direction that you gave her, I don't have that.
What the photo mode?
Yeah, so I think you went into camera format and
Yeah.
then most compatible, which I do have, but that next step, which was the last step you showed, I don't have that option. The option that I have says Apple Pro Raw. So just not sure if that kind of
Well,
works as an
okay.
option. Mhm.
If you have raw as an option, and this is the last thing that I do want to talk. I'm not rushing off, but I'm saying before we close out, I do want to talk about one other thing that will definitely help people with their photos. Is if you have a raw option, that always helps if you're going to edit the pictures later. If you're not going to take the image and go into an editing software, then having a raw image doesn't matter, because all a raw image does is takes a whole when you take a picture in JPEG, which is what it's called when it's not a raw image, it's highly compressed, and they try to make it is most portable and easily used and to go on a different Instagram. You can email it all over the place, do whatever the case may be with it. However, if you're going to use a raw image, that collects probably like 3 to 4 times more data when taking the picture, but it allows you to adjust your lighting. It allows you to adjust your skin tones, your white balance, and a whole long list of other things that you can do if you're going to take the picture and put it into an editing software like Lightroom or something along those lines. So if you're not going to do any editing after you take the picture, leave raw alone. If you are going to, then use the raw. However, keep in mind, if you are one of the people who have an iPhone that always needs more space, storage, then taking a bunch of raw images isn't going to be a good idea, because you're going to run out of space a lot quicker. It's probably, 5 to 10 times more data that's collected with each image than it would be if you were just taking a regular JPEG.
Got you. Thank you.
Have another hand. You guys know you can just take yourself off of mute if you want, but Ms. Diane, hope I'm saying your name right.
Yes, Diane. Hello. I have two questions. I'm using an old phone. It's a Google Pixel 6.
Okay.
And I noticed something called a spear, a photo spear. What is that?
A photosphere. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm sorry, as somebody who does not use a Android phone, and I'm not familiar with the term because it may be called something else on an iPhone. I don't know offhand.
Well,
What
it's
do you
like a
do?
box, and it has a circle, and it says line up the dot. There's a big dot. Line it up in the circle.
Diane, as I do some research here, it looks like it's very similar to a panorama setting. Which
Oh,
know
okay.
I've never used it on this phone, but I did see it available as I was searching when
I do have a
looking
panorama
through it.
setting.
Yeah, so I guess maybe if you can give her some insight on that, what you know about Panamera.
Okay, the panoramic photos are fun. That and a lot of times when you're looking at a landscape photography, or you're looking sometimes even like a large group of people, if they can stand still long enough, if you are trying to get something that won't necessarily fit into the generic screen, or then you can start taking the picture and then move in whichever direction that the panel is going in, whether it's left to right or right to left. Or sometimes people utilize it to go up and down. When they're doing cityscape photography, they'll start at the base of a very tall building and then pan back and go all the way up. That way you can have an image from top to bottom and it all fit inside of that screen. So yeah, technically, if it's just pano, then it's panoramic. It allows you to slowly take a picture and squeeze all of the oversizedness of the image into one frame.
Okay, thank you.
You can do some fun stuff with that. So because it's slow, you can start in one place when you're taking a picture of one person, and then have that person, before you move to the next screen, go do something different in the next place, and then have them in 4 to 5 different areas inside of one picture, because they just moved along with the panoramic. So your imagination is the limit of how far you could take that.
I'm gonna try that. So my second question is, which do you think is a more engaging photo? So I like to take pictures for Instagram.
Okay.
And if I'm drinking wine or I'm at a wine event, should I take a picture of just the bottle with a glass of wine, or a person drinking the wine or holding the bottle? So do people engage more with faces and the wine, or just the wine? Or
To be perfectly honest with you, I like all of the above. And to be because there's going to be people who just want they want the information. They're there to gain knowledge. So if you put the label of the bottle and you take that picture, that's going to be what they need. And so they're going to interact with that. And then there's going to be, pictures that are, you could show somebody drinking the wine. And then, that's an aesthetic type of a situation, because that's more of a lifestyle image that you see somebody and because there's multiple images there. You got the wine. Do they look like they're having a good time? Is this person aesthetically pleasing? So so if you're on Instagram and you take all 3 of those types of images, put them in a carousel, and then and carousels get way more engagement anyway. So then that might be something that, you want to try.
okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? What are some tips for, wait, Talika, I saw you take yourself off of mute. You want to say something?
I know he was mentioning recommendations for folks to save memory and things of that sort. And because I was kind of new to the live photo world, obviously turning that off, I would assume, can save that as well. But I also noticed that my photos come out clearer when I have that live option off on Apple. So I just wanted to kind of just share that.
Yeah, that's exactly true, because basically a live photo is a short video. And so depending on where they stop the video or the actual image that you see, it can be some motion blur there. And a lot of times motion blur, well, just based off of, the name of the word itself, blur, isn't going to lead to a sharp image. So yeah, you're spot on with that.
Anybody else? I was just going to ask about like exposure and contrast and stuff like that. Just some quick tips. Like, say you did take a picture and your settings weren't right and you're trying to fix it without, looking like a clown or too dark or whatever. Like, what are some exposure contrast tips?
Well, without knowing what you're using to edit it or adjust the exposure
On the phone. I mean, iPhone. On the iPhone.
Well, okay. 2 things, and I'm gonna tell this to any and everybody, because this it works on all phones from what I understand. One of the best ways, and I think is free or can be free, is to edit images on the go, is an app by Adobe called Lightroom. It will save you a ton of time. You take your pictures, you open them in Lightroom. They have a lot of simple features. You can just hit auto. It'll try to adjust the lighting, and it'll try to adjust the exposure. Or you can go in there and be as super duper technical with, color grading and doing all kinds of other things. So I think that if you're doing super generic stuff, on the actual iPhone, one of the easiest things to do is to, when you're trying to get back to the general level of how the actual picture should look, is finding anything that is either neutral gray or white in the picture, and then making that one color look its natural way. If you can fix that, and oftentimes, whether if you know whether or not there's a t-shirt or somebody had on white in that image, if you can get that as close to, you know, its true color as possible, that is kind of like a cheat code to get the rest of the picture to look the way that it should.
Oh, that's a good tip. Anybody else? Any other questions?
I just shared 2 photos inside the chat for Diane. That's something that's been working for me. The bottle with the glass already poured, and if I can have the cork in there, is a preference as well. But that's kind of been my addiction over the past couple months. Photos like that. So I shared one that from
I've
my
had
dinner and another one from dinner the other night.
I've had a fun, super fun time taking a lot of pictures of people drinking wine at both huge society events and just at the, you know, regular wine shops around the city. Um, and it's just fun. Like you know, because going back to that question that they asked, it's like, you don't know. Do you want to take a picture of the wine? Do you want to take? And I have a whole gallery. I'll put this a link to it somewhere. I'm not exactly sure how to put this in the chat. But it's a bunch, and it was at a Hugh Society event where we, you know, took a bunch of pictures, and some of them you get artistic with, and, you know, young lady may be holding a glass, and in that glass, you know, she has nice nails, so you don't want anything else to show in the picture except for her hand, that glass, the wine, and the nice nails. Or sometimes you may be a picture of the actual bottle, and that may be the center point, so you can blur the person out who is actually holding the bottle, because that's not really important to the picture, and the bottle is the thing that stands out. There's other times where, you know, what you're taking a picture of is actual the vibe of the event, and people are having a great time talking, laughing. And so, yeah, it's really about, you know, trying to make sure you capture all of the different looks. And if you're doing event photography, that's the big thing, is to tell the story. If somebody couldn't make the event, how, and you wanted to show them in pictures what, you know, what happened that particular day, then that's what, you know, your pictures should be able to do that.
Okay. Anything else before we go? Do you have any final thoughts?
My final thoughts are really, whether it's Lightroom. I know a lot of people, well, some people still use Snapchat filters. They'll take their pictures and they'll go over to Snapchat and they'll doctor them there, whatever the case may be. A lot of like basically post processing. Once you take the picture, a lot of the images that do amazingly well on Instagram, or that people utilize on the Pinterest and all over the place, they, taking the picture is one thing, but the doctoring that they do on the back end is, oftentimes what separates their image from a lot of the stuff that kind of gets looked over. So that is a definitely a big separator for a lot of you, that could help when you know, take your picture, have that, you know, I mentioned the one that's free, and they have paid subscriptions as well too. Lightroom, whatever you're in, Instagram has some of those too. So yeah, just do some post processing before you post it, or share it. And that'll definitely help, get the aesthetic that you're looking for.
Okay, we hope this was helpful. Thank you so much. This was amazing, very informative. Even if it was one question I got answered, it was an answer you didn't have before. So, let's leave with that. We all know that Android has the best phones. Cameras, I will give you that, okay, Talika. But
I
for those of
don't know
you
that though. They're gonna have to prove that to me. They're gonna have to prove that to me.
When they be whipping out them Androids and we try to take a picture, that thing be crystal.
It's a whole nother session that we're gonna have to schedule.
But here's the thing though. I can take a crisp picture with my iPhone, so I don't know that they're gonna have to prove that to me.
You know what? It's really beyond the camera.
Everyday
king.
man.
It's beyond the camera, King. During my cheating days, way before I worked through my commitment issues, right?
Yes. Gotcha.
You can delete a message, right, on Samsung, and it will remove that person from being at the top of your text because technically you have no correspondence that has been recent. If I delete a message today from somebody who texts me today, even though that message doesn't exist on the thread, guess who's gonna come up #1 on that text?
Yes.
The same broad who I had no business texting.
Yes.
And there are so many other examples, but we don't have time for it. But I'm telling you, the Android device, not only does it do right, by its users, but it just has the capabilities to do things that make sense beyond the camera, sir. That's just one.
All right.
Well, I use some quick announcements. I could try to bring this back. Because I don't know where we just went with that. But apparently, Androids are good for cheating. So here we go. Tips, I'm gonna put that on Instagram just in case anybody wasn't aware of that one. But some quick things. We have Wine Culture Fest dates have been announced, July 17th through the 20th. We have a town hall coming up next week. I hope that you will join for that. We will drop the graphic for that tomorrow. And if you are in Atlanta or close to Atlanta and want to fly in, we are having our Legacy Dinner Series. This is called Pathways to Freedom. The Legacy honoree is Harriet Tubman. And so we are going to be having a 4-course meal based off of the 2 paths, the one to Mexico and the one to Canada, and what our ancestors would have consumed along those paths, and inspired by what our ancestors would have consumed along those paths, paired with cocktails and wine. So hope to see you all there.
The date. You didn't mention the date.
The date is February 28th, last day of Black History Month, but also leading into Women's History Month, because regardless of what this administration says, it is still a thing. So I hope to see you there. Tell a friend. And thank you all for being here. Like I said, I hope it was helpful, and good night.
Have a good night, y'all.
Good night. Thank you.